Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping right into something that I think is going to challenge how you view your entire life.
It definitely challenged mine, yeah.
Right. I mean, we're looking at this fascinating translated essay from 2024 by an author named Feng. It's titled, Why Strive to Become a Celestial Being?
Which I know sounds very mystical right out of the gate.
It does. But our mission today is to take that text and explore this really profound philosophy of confinement and liberation. We're going to use the author's historical examples as a sort of launch pad to help you, listening right now, identify the hidden prisons in your own life.
Because we all have them, even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, because Feng starts with this analogy that just grabbed me immediately. If you ever watch a caterpillar spin a cocoon, it looks, incredibly peaceful, like this perfectly engineered silk sleeping bag, the ultimate safe room.
Yeah, from the outside, it looks perfectly safe. But if you look at it through the lens of biology, that cocoon isn't just a shelter. It's actually a ticking clock.
Which is such a terrifying realization.
All right.
It's just a temporary holding cell. And if that insect inside doesn't wake up and violently struggle to tear through those silk walls, well, it suffocates.
It dies, yeah.
It dies inside the exact same structure that was supposed to incubate it.
Because the safety inevitably becomes a tomb if you stay inside it for too long. The very walls that protected you when you were vulnerable become the things that kill you when it's time to grow.
It's a brutal image. But it raises this thought-provoking premise for you, the listener. We usually think of success as just the result of hard work, right? Like, keep your head down and grind.
Right, the whole bloom where you're planted mindset.
Exactly. But what if the absolute most important factor is actually escaping the environment that bounds you? What if the comfort zone you're sitting in right now is actually a tomb?
It completely flips the traditional narrative. Feng argues that remaining in a confining environment naturally stifles your potential. It doesn't just slow you down, it stops you entirely.
So it's not a setback, it's a fatal error.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how he maps out what he calls the geography of greatness to prove this.
Moving from the biology of the cocoon to real human potential.
Yeah, to actual historical figures who had to leave their home countries to achieve anything brilliant. He looks at someone like Elon Musk and makes the case that if Musk had just, stayed in South Africa instead of migrating, he'd likely just be another ordinary person.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. And he builds this pretty compelling pattern. He points to Einstein leaving Germany, Sergey Brin leaving the Soviet Union, Enrico Fermi leaving Italy, Madeleine Albright leaving Czechoslovakia, Arnold Schwarzenegger leaving Austria.
That's a massive list.
The whole premise is that none of these people would have embarked on those life-defining trajectories if they had just stayed put.
Okay, I hear that, but I look at that list and you've got theoretical physics, global tech, Hollywood. It's impressive. But I have to push back a little. How much of that is the environment, and how much is just the fact that these specific people are once-in-a-generation anomalies? Einstein is the literal definition of a genius.
He's the ultimate outlier, yeah.
Right. So if you're an ordinary person listening to this right now, and you aren't planning to invent a new branch of physics, does this whole cocoon theory actually apply to you? Or is it just for visionaries?
Well, that's the real crux of the argument, isn't it? If this only applies to billionaires, it's just survivorship bias. But Feng argues this is effectively a universal law. And to prove it, he shifts the focus away from singular geniuses and looks at the mass migration of marginalized people.
Oh, you're talking about the 1980 example.
Yes, the Mariel boat lift. He uses this specific historical event to test the theory at the complete opposite end of the social spectrum.
Right.
So in 1980, Cuban President Fidel Castro allowed this massive exodus to the U.S. He basically released about 150,000 individuals, and significantly, according to the essay, this included thousands from prisons, psychiatric facilities, and other marginalized groups.
And just sent them to Miami.
Right, straight into this relatively small American city.
Wait, let me just pause on the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
And just as a quick reminder, we are strictly conveying the author's historical example here, remaining totally neutral.
Absolutely.
So the author frames this as Castro deliberately intending to cause chaos in the U.S., but my question is, how does taking a highly vulnerable population and dumping them into a totally foreign situation prove that escaping boundaries equals prosperity?
It sounds like a recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah, Doesn't a sudden lack of boundaries usually just cause chaos?
You would think so.
Hmm.
But Shufeng points out the reality of what happened. Instead of causing a collapse in Miami, this influx of people fundamentally contributed to the city's long-term prosperity. They became business owners, workers, they really drove the local economy.
Wow, so the chaos was just temporary.
Exactly. And the mechanism behind why this works is what's so interesting. It's the friction of the new environment. When you take people out of a system that suppresses them, even if you throw them into a new place involuntarily with zero resources, the basic human instinct for survival kicks in.
They don't have a choice.
Right. The artificial constraints of their old reality are just gone, so they're forced to adapt. And in that forced adaptation, they discover capabilities they were never allowed to exercise in their previous cocoon.
It's like taking a fish out of a stagnant, toxic tank and throwing it in the ocean. It doesn't matter if you threw it in there maliciously. The fish is in clean water now, so it's going to swim.
That's a great way to look at it. And Shuifeng asks us to imagine the alternative. What if those 150,000 people had never crossed the ocean? Their fate, if they had remained within that rigid structure, would have been overwhelmingly tragic.
So the act of breaking free changes the destiny, even if you didn't choose it. That reframes so much of how we view our own setbacks. I mean, let's zoom in to the listener right now. Think about the times in your own life where you were forcefully pushed out of a comfortable situation.
Oh, like a sudden job loss.
Yes. Or maybe a long-term relationship ended completely out of the blue. In that moment, it feels like chaos and tragedy.
Because you've been ripped out of the cocoon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But have you ever looked back at that exact moment, maybe 5 years later, and realized it was the ultimate catalyst for your own growth? You were pushed out of a boundary you didn't even know was suffocating you.
It's such a powerful heuristic, but there is a much darker side to this logic that the author gets into.
At the cost of not escaping.
Yeah. If escaping brings prosperity, what happens when a boundary is enforced upon you against your will and you can't get out? What is the literal cost of being trapped?
And Suifeng doesn't shy away from that at all. He brings up the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war.
Which is obviously a very heavy topic.
It is. And again, to be clear, we're just presenting the author's philosophical observation here. But he points to the reported 200,000 dead Russian soldiers. He uses this grim calculus. He says if that country didn't exist, or if those men weren't citizens bound to those specific borders, this tragedy wouldn't have unfolded for them.
This raises an important question about how we view identity. Suifeng is looking at this purely as a philosopher examining the invisible structures that control us.
It's staggering. We just accept nationality as this default setting. I am from here, you are from there. But he frames those inherited identities as rigid prisons. An accident of birth puts you inside a boundary, and if you can't escape it, it can literally become fatal.
It proves that confinement isn't just about failing to become a billionaire. In extreme cases, the boundaries we just accept as normal are matters of physical survival.
So what does this all mean for us? Because we've got the extremes here, the prosperity of escaping and the literal death toll of being trapped. But most people listening aren't dodging artillery shells.
Right, thankfully.
How do we take these massive geopolitical stakes and use them to, audit our everyday lives?
Well, Yufeng gives us a very uncompromising tool for that. He strips away the history and just defines what a prison actually is. He says, quote, "Whatever confines you is a prison, no matter its form."
Whatever confines you. I mean, that is incredibly broad, but it's so precise.
Because the form doesn't matter. A prison could be made of steel bars, or it could be made of societal expectations. And once you recognize you're inside one, he says you only have 3 choices.
Just 3.
Just 3. Choice 1, escape the prison. Choice 2, endure the suffering while waiting for your sentence to end. Or choice 3, die within the prison walls.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you, the listener. Let's look at your daily routine right now through those 3 choices. What is the invisible architecture trapping you?
Is it a job?
Right. Is your current job your prison? Are you just enduring a miserable 9 to 5, waiting for the imaginary end of your sentence when you hit retirement?
Wow.
Or maybe it's a relationship you're stuck in. Or even your own mindset.
The professional world is completely full of these invisible prisons. Think about the golden handcuffs of corporate life.
Oh, man. So true.
The salary's great, the benefits are great, but the work is just soul-crushing. Shifeng would argue that handcuffs made of gold are still handcuffs. You're just choosing option 2. You're enduring a very well-decorated sentence.
If I can try an analogy here, it's like spending your entire life inside a video game simulation.
Okay, I'm tracking.
You spend 80 years grinding to unlock every cosmetic skin. You buy the virtual mansion, you become the top player on the server. You've mastered the game. But you never actually took the headset off. You just mastered the simulation, but you never escaped the boundary.
Yes. That is exactly the illusion of progress he warns about. He has this incredibly sobering line where he explains that if you don't break free, any status or fame or wealth you attain while imprisoned will eventually, quote, dissipate like smoke in the wind.
Because you just spent your life decorating a jail cell.
Exactly. You convince yourself that getting promoted to cell block monitor meant you weren't a prisoner anymore.
But the walls are still there.
They haven't moved an inch. And this realization sets up the ultimate climax of the whole essay. He takes this concept that earthly achievements mean nothing if you're confined and scales it up to the absolute metaphysical maximum.
Right, he goes from the geography of nations to, well, the geography of existence itself.
Yeah. He introduces this grand thesis. He says, the two greatest prisons of all are your physical body and the earth itself.
Which is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Because under that framework, literally everyone is trapped. He looks at emperors, presidents, mega-wealthy billionaires.
People society says are the ultimate winner.
Exactly. And he categorizes them as nothing more than high-ranking prisoners or famous prisoners.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it forces us to reevaluate everything we discussed earlier. Remember Einstein leaving Germany or the refugees leaving Cuba?
Yeah.
Shifeng is using those physical migrations as metaphors for a much larger spiritual migration. Leaving your oppressive home country is really just practice. It's a localized rehearsal for leaving the ultimate confines of physical existence.
Wait, let me make sure I'm fully grasping this. If I spend my whole life climbing the corporate ladder to become the CEO, I haven't actually escaped anything.
Not fundamentally, no.
Even if I have the private jet and the yacht, if I'm still entirely bound by earthly anxieties, if I'm terrified of aging or paralyzed by the fear of losing my money, I'm just in a nicer cell.
You've upgraded to a maximum security suite with better catering, but you are still suffocating in a cocoon. The anxiety of maintaining your status is its own form of suffocation.
Because you're hyper-aware of the walls. So what's the alternative then? How do you break out of a prison that is literally your own biology?
Well, Swething argues that the only ultimate pursuit is to strive to become a celestial being.
A celestial being, which sounds, it sounds very esoteric. What does he actually mean by that? Is he telling me to grow wings? Because that's not exactly actionable advice for the listener.
It's less about growing wings and more about a fundamental shift in consciousness. Becoming a celestial being, in his framework, means transcending the gravity of those earthly anxieties. It's a state of elevated existence where you detach your identity from things that are guaranteed to decay.
So it's shifting where your identity lives.
Yes.
If my identity is tied strictly to my bank account or my physical youth, I'm trapped because earthly forces will eventually destroy both of those things. But if my identity is anchored in a higher consciousness, the walls of the earthly prison start to lose their power.
And he's remarkably pragmatic about this. He doesn't say it's going to be easy. He writes that striving to become a celestial being might not guarantee success, but at least there is hope.
Because the alternative is just doing nothing.
Right, and doing nothing guarantees despair and death within the prison walls.
It brings us right back to the caterpillar in the cocoon. You either struggle violently against the silk walls, hoping to become something completely unrecognizable that can fly, or you just accept the comfort and suffocate.
It's a philosophy that demands relentless forward motion. You have to constantly seek out the boundaries of whatever box you're in right now and dismantle them.
And then you realize you're just in a slightly larger box and you do it again.
Exactly, until the only box left is the planet itself.
Wow. Which leaves us with a truly fascinating implication for humanity.
Oh, the space exploration idea.
Yeah. Think about our collective technological obsession right now. We are pouring billions of dollars into building rockets, trying to literally defy gravity and leave Earth.
Right.
If our physical bodies and the Earth itself are the ultimate prisons, as Kuai-Feng suggests, could humanity's drive to go to Mars be a physical manifestation of this deep spiritual desire to escape?
That is such an incredible thought. It's like we as a species are instinctively feeling the walls of our planetary cocoon.
We're unconsciously trying to escape and become actual celestial beings among the stars. The rockets are just us violently struggling to tear through the silk.
Trying to prove that the boundary of the sky isn't a death sentence.
Man, that gives me chills. What an unbelievable lens to view our own ambition through. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today.
It was a pleasure, really.
And to you, listening right now, Take a hard look at the architecture of your life today. Audit those invisible boundaries. Figure out which ones are keeping you safe and which ones are slowly suffocating you. And whatever you do, don't stop pushing against the walls. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.